Everybody. So soon we'll be doing some minor upgrades to the Cube Computer Plexi to make it a little more relevant for what I need it for nowadays. So currently the Plexi has a Western Digital 1TB Enterprise class hard drive alongside a Seagate 120GB hard drive. So the 1TB hard drive houses Windows 10 along with files. And the thing is, Windows 10 nowadays, more and more, you're pretty much required to have a solid state drive to have a usable computer. Now the Plexi, matter of fact, I think is quite dated. I'm outdated on Windows 10. I think it's still running 2004. So it's not even running the latest build. If it was, it would be even slower. Now the Western Digital drive, I can say that it's pretty snappy for a hard drive, and it gives the Cube Computer Plexi that classic sound of the hard drive accessing. The original iteration of the Plexi back in 2006 had a 20GB Maxter hard drive alongside its compact OEM Pentium 3 based motherboard, and that 20GB Maxter hard drive definitely was audible. And the Western Digital drive that's in it right now kind of mimics that sound. But, as mentioned, the hard drive performance is just getting to where it's not sufficient enough. Also, it would be nice to have more space on this thing. Now, that little 120GB Seagate drive, the original reason I put that in there was to build operating system images. Like I would do a install Windows, install my software that I would use when I refurbish computers, sysprep the software, and then boot back into the regular OS, and then use a disk cloning utility to copy the contents of the little 120GB Seagate drive over to a virtual disk image. But let's face it, that 120GB Seagate hard drive is just horribly slow. Matter of fact, running Windows 11 on it is like watching paint dry. I rarely ever use it. It hasn't really been used much. So, we're going to be doing a couple of things. We're going to be dropping in a SATA SSD. Of course, this system's way too old to be the M.2 style. So, I got a couple of 256GB SATA SSDs kicking around. I'm going to actually install one into the Plexi. And I'm also going to be working on transforming its hard drive setup as well. We're going to be going from the current setup to using the former Mid-Tower Lux hard drives for data storage. So I got two 2TB Hitachi drives here. Now in the Mid-Tower Lux, these were set up in a striped configuration. However, due to the age of these drives, I mean, the chances of failure is higher, so I don't want to waste them since they're still good drives. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to set them up in a RAID mirror setup, or a RAID1 setup. That way I'll have 2 TB of mirrored storage, because one thing the Plexi does get used for is when I work on computers for people, I back up files off of their computers onto the Plexi. That way I can wipe and reinstall their OS or whatever, or replace their hard drive or what have you. So it'd definitely be nice to have some extra storage. Okay, so currently I have a standalone 2 TB drive hooked up to the Plexi. I'm in the process of offloading the user profile contents to this hard drive, as well as some data backups I have on there, because we got to trim down the contents of the C drive to be well within the size limits of a 240 or 256GB SSD. So all the stuff that's getting offloaded onto this drive will ultimately end up on the 2x2 RAID1 setup that's going to be in this thing. So the first step is to, again, offload the excess stuff from the Plexi C drive onto this drive here, and then I'm going to make a copy of the contents of the Plexi C drive onto a new SSD, and at that point we'll begin doing the actual install work. Okay, everybody, so I've got the files copied off the 1 terabyte hard drive. I got the data on that 2 terabyte single drive, and I have the OS and stuff copied over to this SSD. So now we're going to go ahead and do the actual process of swapping out the hard drives. So the way this is going to work is we've got to take this cage out of here. And of course, for those who don't know the Cube Computer Plexi, everything except for the motherboard is really held in by hot glue. The original Cube Computer Plexi, actually the motherboard had the standoffs for the motherboard were drilled into the top layer of acrylic, and the expansion cards were really just held on by glue on the sides. With the new Plexi, I improved that design using a motherboard tray out of an old HP Pavilion desktop, so that way the motherboard and stuff is easily removable, as well as the expansion cards. But the hard drives, the cage is still glued in. Now theoretically what I could do is I could use Velcro to hold it on, but I simply don't have any Velcro on hand. So what we'll do is we'll go and unplug the power and data connections to the hard drives, and now what we'll do is we'll just carefully pull back and forth. I should note that on purpose I put a minimal amount of glue in place, literally just enough to hold the tray, the hard drive cage in place, so that way it could easily be removed in case I need to take the drives out. And it's loose. Okay, so we got the hard drives out. Need to try to peel up the original glue, which it seems so far so good. It's going to come up. So to be honest, when the drive cage goes back in, it's going to probably be held with even less glue, because when the drive cage was put in, it was before the CD drive and the card reader was added. Matter of fact, the card reader was added at some point later, if I do remember right. Okay, so we got almost all the glue up. Alright, good. So we got all the hot glue out. Now it's just a matter of pulling the drives out of this E-Machines hard drive cage and putting the replacement drives in. And these hard drives are heavy. Yeah, the 1 terabyte drive, it's an absolute monster. At least 2 platters. It's not like today's single platter 1 terabyte drives. Matter of fact, I think 2 terabyte drives are probably single platter now, given how far hard drive tech has come. So we're going to pull these screws out. Okay, so we got this old Seagate Barracuda 7200.9 120 gigabyte hard drive. This thing has probably 2 platters at least. Yeah, very, very old technology. And here is the monster 1 terabyte Western Digital WD1003 FBYX enterprise storage hard drive. I must say, I mean, I got a second one of these, and I could put these in RAID if I wanted to. Now this one has, I'm pretty sure this one now has way more hours than the other one, because I pulled these out of one system. The computer had these two. Either they were set up as separate data partitions or they were in a RAID configuration. I can't remember for sure. It's been a while. But put that to the side. And I just spotted a little more glue inside the Plexi. Gotta get that out before I put the cage back in. That was real simple. Just peel it out and it's out. That glue does a really good job of bonding acrylic to acrylic. That's the key thing. Metal to acrylic, a little different. I mean, it gets a pretty good bond. I mean, all things considered, it's not perfect, but it's not terrible. And anyways, now let's go ahead and put the quote-unquote new hard drives into this cage. Okay, so we got the drives mounted into the cage. So now I gotta go and heat up the hot glue gun. That way I can put this cage back into place. Okay, so while we're waiting on the hot glue gun to heat up, let me go and give you sort of a rundown what I'm going to do with everything. So the solid state drive, it's going to get mounted pretty much right on the top of this optical drive, which is back in there. So I already have a SATA cable ready to go, and I went ahead and grabbed a 4-pin Molex to SATA adapter cable to plug on to the available 4-pin Molex connection. Okay, so the glue gun's heated up. So we'll go ahead and put a small dab of glue on this. This SSD is all plastic, so we can mount it pretty much wherever. Ain't got to worry about none of that. So we're going to stick it right on the back of the, or the top of the CD drive. The general idea is if I need to pull it out, I can easily get it out, because I'm putting just a small dab of glue in the center. That way it won't take much effort to pop it loose, but the small dab of glue will be just enough to hold it in there. Hold it there for just a moment, let that dry. Okay, so now we're going to apply a small blob of glue in the center. Relatively speaking. And then what we'll do is set the drive cage in there. That glue is already starting to dry. do is we'll add a strip of glue along the side, kind of like it was previously. Okay, so I think that's it for the glue. Now actually I'm going to go ahead and glue this fan in place because, well, the fan was just, previously it was just sitting in there. Again, just a small dab of glue. Just to hold that case fan in place. So yeah guys, this is exactly how the original Cube Computer Plexi was put together. Hot glue. This is how we put these things together back at Hopo High School in 2006. All the students in the classroom, or most of the students in the classroom who participated in the final lab, built these things, and every person kind of had their own variants. Some people put the power supply unit and drives up top and the motherboard down below, while others put the power supply and drives in the center section and the motherboard up top. So one secret you probably didn't know about the Plexi, because I'm assuming you probably didn't watch the video back in 2017 when I resurrected the Cube Computer Plexi, was I have a little memorial on the back of the Plexi in memory of the computer engineering teacher at Hopo High School who was tragically killed in a car wreck on December 30th, 2008. Very sudden. It was a very sad time for Hopo High School. So Michael Healy was the man who coined the term Cube Computer. Y'all may have wondered about the name Cube Computer Company. Well, that was kind of a name that I come up with, but Michael Healy used to call these acrylic computers cube computers. No, they're not shaped exactly like a cube, but that's what he called them. He called them cube computers. And I just, that term just kind of stuck with me. And of course, Cube Computer Company came to be a thing in 2006. It's crazy, just 3 more years, Cube Computer will be 20 years old. Where has time gone? So yeah, that glue is still drying, but there's your good look at the rear of the Plexi. Something you don't get to see very often because it's facing the wall over there. Be honest guys, bringing back the Cube Computer Plexi was the best thing I ever did for Cube Computer Company and the channel, Cube Computer Channel. Because this little computer right here was what started it all. The Mid-Tower Lux, of course, replaced the original Plexi back in May 2007. Because I simply needed a full-size tower or mid-tower case. But yeah, the Plexi, it definitely needed to come back in some kind of form. Because it's a piece of my teenage years. And of course, it's what started it all. I do not know how many of these Plexi Cube computers are still in existence. Because, you know, some people, they don't really care about that stuff and they just break it down and trash it or whatever. Give it away or who knows. But this one here is still around. Okay, so that glue is probably dried up good enough now, so we'll go ahead and continue plugging stuff in. Okay, so I went ahead and just hooked everything back up off camera. So we got our power and data connections for the 2 hard drives. We got our power and data connection back there in the far back for the SSD. You can see it right next to the optical drive. So we have pretty much we have color-coded SATA cables on this. We have, of course, the yellow cable represents the connection to the SSD for the, of course, boot drive. I'm going to pull a little more slack through here. That way there's a little more slack under the system, or in the system rather. We have our red connections, which are the data drives. And our blue connections are, of course, the accessory SATA connections. These are what I use, of course, when I plug up hard drives to back up, image, or whatever. This really long one comes in use because if I'm working on a desktop, I can power the hard drive off of its desktop power supply and just exchange the internal motherboard SATA connection for this SATA connection. And there you go. Otherwise, I use these power connections here. Okay, first power up. There we are. I think once we get that Phenom 2 6-core processor in there, that should probably help with boot up times. Because I can see that there's a good bit of disk activity, but there's also a lot of pauses in there too. You can tell the SSD is not being very heavily worked. So I still got to restore all the files like the desktop and everything. That's why this thing keeps complaining every time I start it, because there's no desktop. No desktop, no documents, no pictures, no videos, no music, none of that. So let me see if I have the RAID Expert installed on here. Here we are. I'm going to open it with Edge, because I got a bunch of stuff in Chrome that would come up if I launched Chrome. This is so dumb. Maybe in an enterprise environment it makes sense to have a login password for your RAID, but when it's on a single desktop, it's like, why? Going here to physical drive view, and we can see our two drives. Alright, so we're going to logical drive view. Let's go to create. We're going to select RAID-1, which is mirror pair to drives. So we could do RAID-0, which is a stripe array. It doubles the capacity, but if one drive fails, you're just done. RAID-1 is a mirrored pair of identical drives, so you don't get increased read performance or double the capacity with this, but you basically have a backup there at all times in case one of the disks fails. And just a bunch of disks, or just a bunch of drives, it's kind of like a RAID stripe, but it's not actually a stripe array. It's just combining multiple disks, and you're only getting performance you're only getting the performance of a single drive when it's JBOD. Alright, so RAID-1 it's going to be. So select one of the following groups: single disk. Alright. got these two selected. Let's select next. I'm just going to call this data, or Plexi data, why not? We're going to leave everything at the defaults and click finish. Okay, it says it's functional. That being said, we're going to have to go into computer management. Go to disk management. And you can see we now have a prompt to initialize a disk. So we'll go ahead and initialize this disk. Alright, so we're going to do a new simple volume. And we'll go with, let's see what our current drives are. C is our main hard drive. I'm going to change our DVD drive to drive E first. That way we can use drive D for our data. So all we gotta do is select it, right click, change drive letter or paths, select change. We'll change this to E. Select OK, click yes, and now create a new simple volume. Select next, next, next. We'll call this data. Next, and finish. Okay, so now that's going to format, and we now have our data partition ready to go. Okay, so now I have our drive that has our data stored on it plugged up, and I got a little fan there plugged up too to push some air over, because when I was backing stuff up to it the other night, it actually got pretty warm, and I was not really a fan of that. So at least now we have cooling. Alright, so what I'm going to do is we'll go ahead and copy back our files. Oh yeah, I had to remove the drive letter to force this thing to dismount, the way I could unhook the hard drive the other night. So let's go ahead and add a letter back for now. Alright, so here's what we need to copy back. So let's drag and drop. This will copy all the stuff back over. And this may take a little while to complete, so we'll just let this run and do its thing. Okay, so the files have been copied over. That being said, what we need to do now is go ahead and specify the location for the files for documents, desktop, downloads, music, pictures, and videos. Okay, so what we'll do, we'll start with desktop, go to properties, set the location, which will be D users Nick desktop. Let's hit ignore all. So now we can see our desktop icons are back. And we'll just keep going. Next we'll do documents. Okay, so now we can see everything's back where it needs to be. Like for example, there's the pictures or documents, you know, all that good stuff. So I've actually still got some stuff I need to copy off of the drive, but I can do that at a later time. So yeah, that's the process of that was a process of upgrading the Cube Computer Plexi to a solid state drive for the boot drive, and also upgrading the storage to a larger capacity, doubling the capacity as well as offering a mirror security. So anyways, hope y'all enjoyed it. Thanks for watching. Well everybody, that wraps it up for this video, and I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please like the video, leave a comment, subscribe to Cube Computer channel, and be sure to tick the bell, that way you get notified of new video posts. Also, I recommend following Cube Computer Company on Facebook. A link is in the video description. In addition to computer tech videos, I have a second channel, Cube Comp MTDX. Links are available at the end of this video. Again, I hope you enjoyed this video, and thanks for watching and your support.